right now, I'm in the middle of a project, and I'm struggling with it. I've been trying to dedicate a lot of thought into why I'm potentially struggling with it and what it is that's getting in the way. And I think there are a couple of things. For some reason, when it comes to these kinds of projects in which I have to come up with them myself, there's extra criteria that I put in place that I don't impress upon model making projects. I think potentially I'm focusing too much on the end of year review, something that I kind of committed to in 2024, something where I display all of the things that I've made. I talk sort of a little bit about the projects in a way that I didn't maybe in the video when I made it, and sort of, review the projects, see how I feel about them, see what I think about it, and like I say, review the year. And, at this point we're in June, and I've made 2 models, I think, 2 models, I think, this year. And for some reason, I am beating myself up about that. I should have done more. I should be trying harder. I should be working more on these projects to get them going. However, contextually surrounding this is a lot of life stuff. Hannah and I were looking at buying our house. We're also getting married this year. There's a lot of things happening in terms of obviously the world gradually getting more and more expensive and stuff like that, and so money is harder to come by, disposable income is significantly less, and so ordering models and painting them isn't necessarily as feasible as it was a year ago. And I think because of those things, there are solutions to that problem that don't revolve around money, but I am struggling to get it to work for me, and I think that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. The problem I'm coming across is I feel compelled to churn stuff out so that I am in a position by the end of the year that, look how impressive this year was for me, look at all the work I've done, here it is, like, wow. And I think because of that, some of the projects that I've been coming up with independent of the models haven't really landed, or I haven't really been able to get them going in a way. And I was thinking about this the other day. I do think a lot about all of this kind of stuff. There's a lot of factors in play that I think are working against me when it's coming to these projects. The main one being, it's better to be making something than nothing. And I think I have that urge, that sort of compulsion, if you like, to constantly be making things, to constantly be working on projects, to spend all of my days off churning through stuff, making videos, coming up with different independent projects, blah, blah, blah. And this one that I'm working on right now, I think the project is exactly what I want to be doing. However, I'm still doing it kind of sideways. I'm still not quite doing it properly. And I think the issue is I don't want to overcomplicate things because I don't want it to take too long. Because if it takes too long, then I'm going to make if it takes too long, I'm going to make less content overall. However, the impact is that the content that I'm making is lesser as a result because it is rushed. It's a bit higgledy-piggledy. It's not what I truly want it to be. And so it's something that I really want to work on. I really want to be able to have these things just flow from me and not be focused on these invisible deadlines that I put in front of myself, or, not be focused too much on what other people think regarding these projects. I think one thing that I used to have a YouTube channel, right? I used to have a gaming channel called Quinvisible, and it was very much in that Let's Play kind of era of YouTube videos and YouTube channels, somebody playing a video game and recording their reactions to it. I ended up deleting that channel a handful of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because I feel like it represented the worst part of what content creation can be, in which I just churned through videos. I was making multiple videos a week while still working a 9 to 5, And also, having a home and a relationship and wanting to make all of those things work, there was a lot of work going into it, and there were pockets of enjoyment, don't get me wrong, but I think largely I focused too much on the numbers. I focused so much on the metrics of the whole thing, and this video hasn't got any views, and one person disliked this video, oh my god, it's the end of the world. And I got very bogged down in all of that stuff. Success, or whatever the hell that word means nowadays. I think because of that, like I say, when thinking about things now with an older mind, a mind that has sort of dealt with a lot of things through mental health struggles, but also therapy, there's something just fundamentally flawed in that mindset that I think I needed to address, hence the deletion of the channel. But with Make Stuff, I think there's still an element of that there. Don't get me wrong, I do think that the videos that I make now are far superior to the stuff that I made before. But I think with that looming threat of the end of year review, what if I only have a handful of things to review at the end of the year, blah, blah, blah. I think with that hanging over me, I am reducing my own capabilities and preventing myself from really doing what I want to do and really going for it and making something super unique and exciting, and instead limiting myself in these projects that kind of get maybe 35-40% done and then I lose interest. And that initial kind of burst of motivation and burst of stamina is purely, it's better to be doing something than nothing. And I think that's something that I would really fundamentally like to change. When I started Make Stuff, it was my number one motivator was honesty. I really truly wanted this to be about me trying to overcome my own hurdles, mentally speaking mostly, to engage with my creativity in a positive way, in a way that made me feel good and made good quality videos that I would look back on in years to come and be proud of. And I think I've done pretty well at doing that. However, since the money has sort of dried up and the models have slowed down, I found it much harder to just start projects that I actually want to be doing, instead kind of trying to make stuff that I feel other people want me to make, even though there is nobody else involved in the conversation. Something somewhere, there is a jigsaw puzzle piece that is the wrong way round. The piece is there and it fits, but it doesn't look quite right. There are things about what I'm doing that the intention or the execution doesn't match the intention. And, I think this project that I'm working on now, I'm having to redirect it into a place that feels good and right for me, rather than kind of churning stuff out so that it feels good for this magical audience or these other people that I kind of seem to be wanting to satisfy. But I think it kind of speaks to a larger thing, kind of similar to Crisis with Creativity, in which, when I did that, about a year ago now, I think it will be, or not far from, when I did all of that, that was all to do with the ugly angles of trying to get back into something while struggling with your own mental health, the struggle to manifest motivation, and then the arduous battle it is to keep it going. All of that kind of stuff. I think since losing the models and sort of or not losing the models, but losing the frequency of models, I think that intention has kind of disappeared a little bit, and instead I have kind of tried to fall into a habit of just churning stuff out because it's better to have something on there than not. And so I am kind of taking I have been taking a little break from all of my projects to kind of really reevaluate what it is I want, and hopefully actually begin to be able to finish projects in a more succinct and reliable fashion, but specifically projects that I've come up with myself. I think that that's important. It's something that I want to be able to do. I want to be able to come up with a project myself and manifest the results of said project, rather than, I don't know, stumbling at the first hurdle, it feels. So I don't necessarily think that I'm doing anything wrong. I think that I maybe have just lost sight of the goal, and then because of that have kind of become a little bit directionless in the meantime, and have been meandering in the area of where I want to be, but not focused on my objective. So, I don't know. I feel like this was an important touchstone, important moment to kind of have, where I just sort of talk a little bit about what it is I'm doing and what Make Stuff actually is. And, it is very much an expression of me and what I want to be doing, what I want to be able to accomplish, what I want to be able to achieve, and doing the necessary work and learning to achieve those things. And I don't necessarily think there's anything more human than that.